Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha Gopinath Shri Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra. Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtatara Satashi Shrimati Divine Grace Abhaitan Naravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan Ki Jai Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Just before we continue, we're still bound by the 2 square meter principle in the temple room, so we just have to ask devotees to please keep that 1.5 meter distance while sitting down as well. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 3, chapter number 3, entitled The Lord's Pastimes out of Vrindavan, text number 6. Sutam Mridekam Vapusaga Santam Sutam Mridekam Vapusaga Santam Drishtva Sunabhon Matatham Dharitrya Drishtva Sunabhon Matitam Dharitrya Amantritastat Tanayaya Sesham Amantritastat Tanayaya Sesham Datva Tadanta Puram Avivesha Datva Tadanta Puram Avivesha Sutam Mridekam Vapusaga Santam Drishtva Sunabhonmatitam Dharitrya Amantritastat Tanayaya Shesham Datva Tadanta Purama Avivesha Sutam Mridekam Vapusaga Santam Drishtva Sunabhonmatitam Dharitrya Amantritastat Tanayaya Shesham Datva Tadanta Puram Avivesha Sutam Mridekam Vapusaga Santam
matitam daritriya
Vishwasunam Maditam Vigaritya
Mantritastat-tanayaya shesham
Mantritastat-tanayaya shesham
Tarantam puram avivesha
Tasantam puram avivesha. Sutam mridekam vapusabhasantam Vishwasunam maditam daritya Amantritastat-tanayaya shesham Tarantam puramapivesha. Sutam mridekam vapusagrasantam Vishwasunam maditam daritya Amantritastat-tanayaya shesham Tattvadanantam puramavivesha. Mataji. Sutam mridekam vapusagrasantam Vishwasunam maditam daritya Amantritastat-tanayaya shesham Tattvadanantam puramavivesha. Word for word. Sutam, sun. Mride, in the fight. Kam, the sky. Vapusa, by his body. Grasantam, while devouring. Drishtva, seeing. Sunabha, by the Sudarshana wheel. Unmatitam, killed. Daritriya, by the earth. Amantritaha, being prayed for. Tat-tanayaya, to the son of Narakasura. Shesham, that which was taken from. Datva, returning it. Tat, his. Antahapuram, inside the house. Avivesha, entered. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Chanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: Narakasura, the son of Dharitri, the earth, tried to grasp the whole sky, and for this he was killed by the Lord in a fight. His mother then prayed to the Lord. This led to the return of the kingdom to the son of Narakasura, and thus the Lord entered the house of the demon. Purport: it is said in the other Puranas that Narakasura was the son of Dharitri, the earth, by the Lord himself. But he became a demon due to the bad association of Bhana, another demon. An atheist is called a demon, and it is a fact that even a person born of good parents can turn into a demon by bad association. Birth is not always the criterion for goodness. Unless and until one is trained in the culture of good association, one cannot become good. Translation again. Narakasura, the son of Dharitri, the earth, tried to grasp the whole sky, and for this he was killed by the Lord in a fight. His mother then prayed to the Lord. This led to the return of the kingdom to the son of Narakasura, and thus the Lord entered the house of the demon. Om Jnanatimurandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adigaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Guru Deva Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming to this morning's Bhagavatam class. We are discussing this particular section of Srimad Bhagavatam where Vidura meets Uddhava while Vidura is going on pilgrimage. He comes across, during the end of his particular pilgrimage, he comes across Uddhava, who had just seen the Lord return to his abode and was on his way to the ashram of Narayana Rishi, Bhadrika ashram. And he inquires from Uddhava how everyone is doing, and eventually he asks Uddhava, how is Lord Krishna, is he still present in the world in terms of performing his pastimes, or if his pastimes have become unmanifest. So Uddhava, feeling great separation from the Lord, experiences great ecstasy and enters samadhi for some time. And after that he begins to reply to Vidura. The separation that Uddhava felt from the Lord is quite great because Uddhava was present with the Lord for majority of his pastimes on the earth. In fact, all the pastimes the Lord performed outside of Vrindavan, Uddhava was there present with the Lord. So when the Lord left for his own abode, it was natural for Uddhava to feel great separation. Now, Uddhava explains to Vidura about the Lord leaving the Lord's pastimes in Vrindavan, and finally he comes to the Lord's pastimes out of Vrindavan. And here in this particular section he talks a lot about the vibhuti of the Lord, or the prowess of the Lord. So in the first couple of texts we read about how the Lord, he brought back the son of his, the dead son of his teacher Sandipani Muni, how he went to Mathura and killed Kamsa, how he got Rukmini, how he got Princess Nagnajiti, and yesterday how he brought the Parijata flower for Satyabhama, thank you, for Satyabhama right in front of Indra, right under his nose. So it's showing the prowess of the Lord. It's a great way to remember the Lord because the uncommon pastimes of the Lord are the ones that really stick in the consciousness. If he performed any activity as any ordinary living being, then we would automatically assume to him to be an ordinary living entity. But the Lord performs these extraordinary pastimes that are sort of uncommon and not human, simply to be able to reciprocate with his devotees and to attract everyone's attention towards him and his pastimes. Now, regarding the prowess of the Lord, in this particular pastime, Bhava Vibhushan Prabhu was mentioning a bit of it yesterday. What had happened was that at one particular point in time, Indra, being harassed by Bhaumasura, another name for Narakasura, Narakasura was a son of the earth, and Prabhupada mentions in the purport here that he was the son of Dharitri, the earth, by the Lord himself. So he was actually the son of Krishna. And I've heard in a lecture by different Vaishnavas also that actually it was in the form of Varahadev when he had come in contact with Mother Earth while lifting her from the bottom of the ocean. By the touch of the Lord, the son was produced, Narakasura. And unfortunately this Narakasura had a lot of bad association. And it's mentioned here, he had the association of Banasura. And Banasura was another demon. And his pastime in short, or rather his history in short, is that he decided to worship Lord Shiva and get as much material opulence as possible. And his, I guess, material rasa was chivalry in the very most perverted sense, that he would want to fight anyone and everyone just to prove his strength and to have a good fight, to the extent that he asked Lord Shiva for many thousands of hands, just so he could be able to fight his enemies. And it's mentioned that after a period of time he couldn't find enough rivals, that he used to go and bash mountains out of frustration. So then he actually went to Lord Shiva after that and told Lord Shiva, what kind of benediction have you given me? He goes and asks for benediction, he gets the benediction, and then he chastises the person who's giving benediction. Why did you give me this? That's not like satisfying me. So naturally Lord Shiva would get upset with him and said, now you'll find someone who will defeat you. And so what did this demon think? Was he feeling sad, oh, I'm going to die? Again, being a fool, he was very happy. Someone will come and defeat me. Someone will come and defeat me. So he went and off in his own little adventure. Anyway, this is Banasura. So you can understand the quality of association that Narakasura had. It's mentioned that, I was listening to Radhesham Prabhu, he was quoting a sloka saying that even Dvivida was part of this. So these three musketeers had really good association. It's mentioned later on in Bhagavatam that because of Dvivida actually was Dvivida, Mainda, Jambavan, Sugriva, Hanuman. They were the main commanders of the Varna army that went against Ravana. But because of this bad association, this Dvivida came later on and disturbed the pastimes of the Lord, specifically Lord Balaram. When Lord Balaram was enjoying in Vrindavan, having come back after a long period of time with his own particular batch of gopis, then this Dvivida appeared. And this Dvivida appeared, and because of his bad association, it's mentioned that he had gone around polluting all great kings' daughters and trying to destroy the whole Varnashram culture in that way. And because he had appeared in that particular Raivada mountain section, he saw Lord Balaram enjoying with the gopis, and he wanted to disturb and take the gopis for himself. Anyway, Balaram finished that off. So Dvivida, Bhana and Narakasura, bad association. We see the case of bad association also in the 6th canto of Bhagavatam, where we see Ajamil, where Ajamil, he was a very properly situated Brahmana. Just by seeing a low-class man embracing a prostitute, just by that association, it was enough for him to let go of his spiritual principles. So bad association is a very important thing to note in our spiritual lives. In fact, Rupa Goswami mentions in the Upadeshamrita that we need to find the association of devotees and give up the bad association. That's a very important point to note as well, because sometimes we think we should just give up association, bad association. But we also need the positive, which is good association. So I remember sometimes even between association of devotees, we have a little friction. And you're just like, forget it, I'm not going to associate with this person anymore. And who do you end up associating with next? You end up associating with your mind. And naturally that sends you back to your previous association. So the nature of association is that we need to understand devotees, we need to understand that we required the shelter of devotees and the Lord, and that with association, then we'll be able to progress in Krishna consciousness. And a good example of that is Bharat Maharaj. Bharat Maharaj, in one sense, performed his devotional service without association with devotees. And because of that, past samskaras or past vasanas or past impressions within the heart caused him to again deviate from his practice of devotional service. So it's not that we should just give up association altogether. We should cultivate good association. So, in this particular pastime, Narakasura, he thought that, I'm very powerful, so let me go and show the world how powerful I am. So he tried to go and grasp this whole sky, Prabhupada writes. In other words, he wanted to overpower the demigods and take over their heavenly system. To the extent that he did, he had enough power that, how they say it's easy as stealing a candy from a baby. So he was able to steal even the earrings of the mother of the demigods. So he was able to take that and Varuna's umbrella. These are items that they hold personally, It's kind of personal items, ornaments that they'd always possess with them. But Narakasura was so powerful that he was able to take it away from them. So as anyway, taking candy from a baby. So Narakasura, he decided that, okay, so after I've taken all of these things, I'll also take that thing which is very dear to the demigods, which is their sporting grounds, their place of enjoyment, which was the top of the Mandara mountain. So he took that as well for his own enjoyment. And he established his kingdom in Pratyajyotishpur, I think, or let me see what the name exactly is. Pragyotishpur. So he established his kingdom there. And he set up a nice fort. It's mentioned that around his kingdom there was a nice little fortress. Around the fortress there was nice barbed wire. Then there was electric wire. And then there was gaseous items. And then after that you've got the canals full of water. And then after that you've got more barricades. So he really did his homework. And Prabhupada mentions that he even had automatic machines. So he had turrets and all that sort of stuff there as well. Machines to help protect from the enemy. So at one particular point in time in Dwarka, Indra came and begged the Lord, please, my mother's earrings, Varuna's umbrella, our mountain, it's all been taken by Bhaumasura. Because you see, the demigods, they also have a little bit of pride in having their position. And they also know that to perform their activities as demigods, they need these facilities. That sort of position helps them perform their duties and enjoy material life, so to speak. So the demigods, headed by Indra, begged Krishna, to please kill Bhaumasura. Now, Bhava Bhushan Prabhu was mentioning, the Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions in the purports that Krishna thought, let me take Satyabhama. And there are three particular reasons why he took Satyabhama. Because generally when you go to war, you don't take most dear, beloved person with you. You'd rather leave them at home and go out and fight. But interestingly enough, in Krishna's pastimes, if you see how he took Rukmini away, Prabhupada actually mentions in a particular conversation with, I think, Shrutikirti Prabhu, he mentions that when Krishna stole Rukmini, kidnapped Rukmini in front of all the kings, and he was going away, while Krishna was fighting all those kings, guess who was driving the chariot? Rukmini was driving the chariot. So the princess, we automatically assume that they need to be protected and everything like that. But she was riding the chariot while Krishna was fighting off the enemies. So they had some really good partnership happening. So in the same way, Satyabhama, because of her mood, her reciprocation with the Lord in a particular rasa, she had a feisty, fiery attitude, which pleased the Lord a lot. And my spiritual master often mentions that only the Lord can enjoy such pastimes. So Krishna, he decides to take Satyabhama on this joyride. So that's the first reason. He wanted to give her a novel experience, something new, some enjoyment that he can perform with her. The second reason was that she had already seen Rukmini achieve a parijata flower from Narad Muni. So out of her jealous nature to give Krishna pleasure in that way, Krishna decided, let me go and satisfy her desire in this way. By getting, which was previous texts, or the previous verse, it's mentioned there that the Lord brought back the parijata tree from heaven. Rukmini got a flower, and so Krishna said, don't worry, I'll give you the whole tree. So when he went and gave Satyabhama the tree. So that's the second reason. And the third reason is that it's a more of an interesting reason. You see, earlier in Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, Denakasura, the ass demon, he particularly took over Talavan. In that forest was the fruits of Tala, and those fruits are very sweet and juicy, but because Denakasura had occupied that place, he decided not to give it to anyone, and particularly give it to Kamsa. Anyway, when it comes to the point of killing Denakasura, Krishna doesn't personally do it. Because Denakasura happened to be a descendant of Prahlad Maharaj. because he was in that particular dynasty. And he had promised Prahlad Maharaj that I wouldn't, your descendants, they will be delivered. So he let Balaram do that. So in this particular pastime, Krishna couldn't kill his own son without the permission of the mother, because the mother had already asked that you please protect my son. So Satyabhama, being the origin or the source of Bhumi Devi, she would be able to override that particular blessing or boon that Krishna had given, or that request that Bhumi Devi had asked. So what did he? So he had taken her in the hopes that she would nullify that particular boon, so that he would be able to simultaneously establish the positions of the demigods, give Satyabhama pleasure, and also save the 16,100 queens that were taken by Narakasura. So that's the end of this particular pastime. But as Krishna entered, what's the name again? Pragjyotishpur. When he entered that particular kingdom, it's mentioned that the Lord sequentially, he destroyed each of these barriers. And he used a particular weapon to destroy each of these barriers. Many ask, why do we focus on the Lord's activities of killing demons and fighting? What's the point of it all? We should just focus on his Vrindavan pastime, specifically his Ras Leela. But Prabhupada mentions that the pure devotees, they take both. Whether he's killing or he's loving of his devotees, they relish both with great ecstasy, because it's the Lord. Why do we take Bhagavad Gita, which is from a materialistic point of view just a battle, just an ordinary battle performed by two opposing armies, as a very sacred book? Because Krishna was present there, and because Krishna was giving instructions to Arjuna. That's why. Because the main thing is Krishna was present. Anything in relation to Krishna, that's what we take. Anything not in relation to Krishna, we reject it. So when the Lord performs this particular pastime, it's mentioned that with his club he broke through the rock fortifications, with his arrows, the weapon fortifications, his disc, the fire, water and wind fortifications. I was thinking while he was performing this, and at one point I forget it, I'll just throw a disc, just finish it off, And then with his sword, the Mura Pass cables. So then, as he had done this, he then blew his conch shell, which destroyed all the magic seals. And at that particular point in time, one demon by the name of Mura, a 5-headed demon, he was taking some good rest in the particular canals of that fortification. And then he appeared. It's mentioned that to him, hearing the Lord's conch shell was like a thunderbolt, a heavy thunderbolt. So he woke up with a nightmare, Who is this? Who's making so much noise? And he came out to attack the Lord. And so when he had come out to attack the Lord, he saw before him, the Lord had appeared just like the cloud glittering with lightning on top of the sun. So the Lord had taken Garuda with him, particularly in this particular mission. So he had taken Garuda, and with him on the top was Satyabhama. So Satyabhama was described as lightning, the Lord himself Shyam as the cloud, and Garuda being very effulgent as the sun. So he saw this particular aspect of the Lord. And he tried to attack the Lord. And he tried to attack the Lord with many weapons, and the Lord destroyed all of them with his arrows. So then he threw his own trident at the Lord, and that he broke with many arrows. So this again is describing the prowess of the Lord. First of all, let's try and understand from our limited perspective how long it takes to knock an arrow and to release it. Yeah? And second, that many weapons that were thrown to be destroyed by arrows by Krishna. So you can understand how many times Krishna threw arrows. And then the third thing you need to understand is that the precision of the Lord. You can throw arrows, that's great, but he was so precise that he destroyed every single weapon that came to him. Lances, swords, clubs, you name it. Everything that's, other arrows, he was able to destroy them as well. And it's mentioned that when the Mura demon tried to throw his own trident at the Lord, that was destroyed before it even released from his hand. And the Lord then threw his Sudarshan disc, and that took off the head of the demon. And so the Lord continued forward. and naturally Satyabhama was enjoying this whole pastime. And so the 7 sons of Murademon came out, and keeping, I think his name was Pita, as their commander, they attacked Krishna. And they threw again so many weapons. And Prabhupada mentions in the Krishna book, this is an interesting point. In the Krishna book, when you read it in tandem with the 10th canto and just read the translations, you'll notice 2 things. One, that Prabhupada, he does justice by giving exactly what Bhagavatam is giving, and second, he's giving more. And I was reading recently, I just happened to open the folio base on the computer, and I was going through different books of Prabhupada, and I happened to see Shivaram Maharaj's Venugit there. And I was kind of curious to see what exactly it was about. And it just so happened that I was reading a section of the introduction where Maharaj was mentioning the same point, but he was expressing his awe and astonishment that Prabhupada had not only given what Bhagavatam was given, as Sukadev Goswami had mentioned, but he was giving what all the other acharyas had commented on in those particular pastimes, and his own realizations and commentaries. And I was thinking that was so far out, because we always think, a Krishna book, summary study of the 10th canto. It's a summary, it's not the whole thing. But actually Prabhupada has given us so much and more. And it's mentioned, again, Shrutikirti Prabhu mentions that they were in a particular, I think it was LA, in Los Angeles in the garden. And Prabhupada would often have devotees read Krishna book to him in the afternoon, in the evening. And one particular pastime had come that Krishna was kidnapping Rukmini. And that's where he mentions that actually Rukmini took the reins and Krishna was throwing the arrows from behind. In another section, Prabhupada is mentioning, because Shrutikirti would come to Prabhupada and ask Prabhupada, what should I read? Where should I read from? Prabhupada says, anywhere. Krishna is like a sweet bowl. Anywhere you taste, it's sweet. So Krishna book, he would just read different sections. So one particular section, of Krishna book, it was mentioned how Narad Muni had appeared before Kamsa. And after Vasudev had gone to Kamsa and said, he's my child, please accept my child. And then at that particular point in time, Kamsa felt, okay, he's keeping to his vow. Actually, this child is not going to kill me, it's the 8th one, so you can take it back. Narad Muni appeared on the scene, and he wanted to fast forward the pastimes a bit. So then he came to Kamsa and said to him, actually, it says the 8th child, but you don't know where. Prabhupada saying this to all the devotees there. Actually, Narad Muni told Kamsa, it's the 8th child. In the Krishna book, Prabhupada says it's the 8th child, but you actually don't know which of the children of Devaki. Prabhupada says in that conversation, Shrutikirti remembers, he says that actually you don't know which side it's 8. You don't know whether it's starting from the first child, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or actually it would have started from the 3rd child, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which makes the 8th child the 2nd. So you don't know where it's actually starting and where the actual count finishes. So you better just finish them all. So Prabhupada gives that as well. So Prabhupada gives so much in Krishna book. And it's mentioned there that the way Krishna destroyed the weapons of the enemies was like he destroyed them to so much small shreds that it was like grains falling from the sky. Grains of rice falling from the sky. So that was Krishna's prowess. Anyway, Narakasura came out after seeing everyone destroyed, and he fights with Krishna. Krishna retaliates. At one particular point in time, Narakasura gets so frustrated, as his last resort, he throws the trident. And when he throws the trident, the translation mentions that Krishna released his Sudarshan Chakra and finished him. But the acharyas mentioned that actually at that particular point in time, Satyabhama had enough. She just thought, finish him. This is too much for me. This anxiety is just too much for me. Just finish him off. And that's when Krishna defeats Narakasura. Now, another section to understand, and then so what happens, Krishna defeats Narakasura, Bhumi Devi comes out, she then starts offering prayers to the Lord, and her prayers are all about the inconceivable nature of the Lord, how he's achintya beda beda tattva, that he creates the world, but he's not part of the world, he's not affected by it. So that she tries to glorify the Lord in that aspect, and then tells that here's the son, my grandson. He's now very scared, so she tries to induce compassion in the Lord. Here's the grandson, he's very scared having this happen to his particular father and kingdom, so you please let him take the throne. So then Krishna says, yeah, okay. So the grandson becomes the king of Prag Jyotishpur. So then Krishna then enters the house, and then he meets the queens, or rather the princesses, all the princesses who were kidnapped by Bhaumasura. Now you can see, Dvivida had the same policy, Narakasura also had the same policy. They would go around kidnapping the most beautiful princesses and trying to enjoy their particular life. But what exactly happened is that later on in the Bhagavatam, when everyone meets in Kurukshetra, Draupadi asks all the queens, how did you all come to marry Krishna? How did you all come about having Krishna as your husband? So in that particular point in time, I was reading that section, and it was very interesting to note. I'm going to touch on tomorrow's verse as well, but interesting to note the moods of the queens. Because you see, according to Vedic custom, once the princess is being taken by another man, she's no longer marriageable. She can't be taken by another person. She's no longer chaste according to Vedic system or the Vedic society. But the Lord chose to accept them, disregarding all of this. Why? They pray that Krishna actually killed Bhaumasura for us. So you can understand, we think that Krishna went because of Indra. The queens say, actually no, he came to save us. It just so happened that Indra came and asked. Then they mention, they don't say it out of pride. They say it out of great, respect, out of great ecstasy, out of love, that just see how personal the Lord is, that He's gone out of His way. And you'll see that later on. They actually mentioned that He accepted us, although He doesn't really need a wife. Because He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What does He actually need? He's Atmarama, completely self-sufficient. And Aptakama, whatever desires He has is completely immediately fulfilled. What does He really need? But He still accepted us as His wives. And what was our qualification? Our qualification was that we constantly thought of the Lord's lotus feet. That was their only qualification. So when you read in tomorrow's verse, you'll see how the Lord accepted these 16,100 queens along with these previous 108 queens, so 16,108, and He then entered His kingdom and He expanded into 16,108 Krishnas. And they're all the same Krishna, but it wasn't a mechanical expansion. It wasn't just, Krishna thought, okay, let me just expand, same Krishna everywhere, it doesn't matter. He matched each and every queen's particular rasa with Him. So if a particular queen was short, He would match her size. And in all sort of, physical features, Krishna would match them in that way, just so that they could, relate and have exchange of rasa or relationship with them. So in that section, it's mentioned that Krishna, He knew, being the Paramatma in everyone's heart, He understood their uncontaminated desire to be His wives. So why? Because they constantly thought of the lotus feet of the Lord. So naturally when someone gets sort of this attention from someone as great as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, generally the pride comes to the head. That just see, look at my husband, look at my friend, the coward boys also display it. That Krishna, just see, He's as powerful as demigods. But their mood is that we are as good as Krishna. That means we are also demigods. So their mood is not that much of pride in the sense of, look at us. It's more, how can we use this in Krishna's service, giving Him pleasure. So Krishna finds pleasure when the cowherd boys say that, those sort of things. When they jump on His back and act as equals. So when the queens, taking a step back again, when the gopis, then it's mentioned that when Krishna was about to start the Rasalila, then when the gopis had that slight tinge of pride, that just see Krishna is dancing with us, Krishna left. Because he couldn't tolerate that. It was a pastime, the gopis don't have such pride, but Krishna was just showing how much he doesn't like that sort of attitude. So he left. So the queens obviously wouldn't have that desire, that sort of mentality. Their mentality was that we just simply want the dust of Krishna's lotus feet. It's that dust that Lakshmi Devi desires, and she keeps it upon her breast along with saffron. It's that dust that Krishna as a cowherd boy, very interesting. They weren't mentioning that Krishna in Dwarka. They were saying Krishna as the cowherd boy in Vrindavan, in Braja, that dust which accumulates at his lotus feet because of his walking through Raja, that dust which the gopis and the gopas desire, that dust that the aboriginal women of Vrindavan desire, they all desire it so much that they're willing to become blades of grass and straw in Vrindavan just to get that dust when Krishna tramples on them. We would also like that dust. And they want that dust not just simply for a couple of seconds, they want it life after life, without any other desire. And Uddhava also had this desire. After he went into Vrindavan and he saw the super excellent qualities of the gopis and their devotion for the Lord, immediately he asked for the position of Gulma Roop, a creeper or a particular, plant, that what would happen is that when the gopis would traverse the forest of Vrindavan, or at least when they were going towards their Rasa Leela with Krishna, they would trample on his head so that he would get the dust of their lotus feet. So the mood of the devotee, the prayers of the devotee, they're all coming from this basic platform of humility. That Trinadapi Sunichina Tarorapi Iva Saheshnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. They start from this principle. Because, again, I'm referring to Radhesham Prabhu. He was giving a overview of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in the Bhaktivedanta Vidyapit in Govardhan Eco Village. And he's mentioning this particular section. It's very interesting that the devotees, they're praying to the Lord. The queens, they pray to Krishna, they please come and rescue me. The Bhumi Devi is praying to the Lord, please protect us. So in that way we should understand that actually we are all Prakriti, female in nature, and Krishna is the only Purusha, the male. And that our duty, our mood should be simply to ask the Lord and pray to the Lord for prayer and protection. Now, this is an interesting point, I thought, and I'll end on this one. In the prayers of the conversation between Draupadi and the 16,100 queens, there they mention that we don't want anything else except the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord, to the extent that they say that, look, we don't want liberation, we don't want heavenly planets. In fact, we don't want anything to do with, the 5 types of liberation. Merging with the Lord, getting the opulence of the Lord, the same form as the Lord, all of those things. And what do they say? Please just give us the dust of the lotus feet. Let us be born in Vrindavan as creepers so that we can get the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord. So it's a very interesting contrast. Is praying to the Lord to be rescued from the material world and praying to the Lord to have the dust of His lotus feet. They seem to be quite contradictory, right? One seems to be selfish and the other one seems to be a bit more selfless. I just want the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord. But actually they're one and the same thing. To be able to be freed from material existence, one takes shelter of Krishna. So often we read, the most exalted devotees, they pray that, Swarga Pavarga Narakeshu Apitulyartha Darshana. They don't care where they are. Prabhupada says, whether the printing press is here on this planet or in the heavenly planet or it's in the hellish planet, it will still continue being a printing press. It will still produce books. In the same way, the devotee, wherever they are, it doesn't matter. They'll continue performing devotional service. But at the same time, we need to recognize our position. Sometimes attaining or trying to come to that platform of, whatever, devotional service, whatever. That sort of mentality comes in and complacency creeps in. So it's always good to always have the desire that I want to go home, back to Godhead. Yes, this is Godhead. Yes, this is the abode of the Lord. This is an embassy. We can stay here forever, take birth again and again and again to serve Radha Gopinath. But we should also remember this drive that, yes, I want to go home, back to Godhead. Why? Just so I can please the Lord by engaging in my eternal service with the Lord. So that mood needs to always be there. Just to protect us from complacency, because we're not of the level of that high caliber, at least for myself, of that high caliber of, wherever I go, whatever I do, I'll be able to perform devotional service to the Lord. We need to always have that mood of wanting to always go home, back to Godhead. That will protect us. It's kind of like, when you leave the temple after some time, you go out after a Sunday feast, for example, that mood is, when will I come back to the temple? I have to go home now. And when you come to the temple for any particular service or any particular reason, or to see the Lord perform kirtan, when you come, there's an anticipation that, yes, I'm coming back to Radha Gopinath's temple. That's the anticipation we want. That's the mood of wanting to go back to Godhead. And that's what Radheshyam Prabhu was mentioning, that the mood of the devotee is, please rescue me from material nature so that I'll always be engaged in your loving devotional service. So in this particular pastime we can understand the prowess of the Lord. We can understand how by bad association that this Narakasura deviated from his principles. Even though he was a son of the Lord, he deviated from that particular principle of following Dharma, and he ended up being killed by the Lord himself. And we also see the mood of the devotees, that the Lord is there to simply reciprocate with his devotees, and he performs the pastimes just so that we can also be part of those pastimes. Because sometimes we think, where's Krishna? It's 5,000 years ago and we missed the boat. But actually we haven't. Krishna left all these pastimes in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam so that we can take part in those pastimes. We are currently in the pastimes of Dwarka. We are currently experiencing Krishna kill Narakasura. We just simply have to read and sincerely hear from Srimad Bhagavatam. And if you want to take it a step further, we are still currently living Mahaprabhu's pastimes. Those who are engaged actively in the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they are in the pastimes of the Lord. So the Lord is performing Sankirtan along with the Sankirtan devotees. So just as the queens of Vrindavan, queens of Dwarka rather, they desire the dust of the Lord's lotus feet, similarly the devotees desire the dust of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, just so that they can go out and preach the message of Lord Krishna and bring as many people to the lotus feet of the Lord. So I'll end here. I guess we have 5 minutes for questions. Yes, Prabhu.
We're just thinking about this concept of the conversation between Srila Prabhupada and Srila Kirti. So how should we accept those instructions? Should we say it's okay to have those instructions for ourselves? Is it recommended? Or what is the position?
Instructions in the sense?
So say for example, like the instruction that Prabhupada gave to Srila Kirti was to read anywhere you like.
Well, with, I think it was nectar devotion. Devotees were like completely confused with nectar devotion. Like, how do we understand like Prabhupada? And Prabhupada just said, just read. Just read. So in the same way, we just read Krishna book. For those who don't know where to start, yes, Krishna is like a sweet bowl, you can start anywhere. But recommended is you read cover to cover. And of course, we hear so many Prabhupada said this and Prabhupada said that, so we require some guidance. Any other questions, comments? I remember one of the questions I asked as well. So, association and socializing with others. When you start revealing your heart to the other person, that's when association begins. When you when you're in association with someone else and it starts changing your heart, that's called association. So when you're in the association of devotees, after you leave the association, hopefully you'll never leave association, but when you go back to your life, so to speak, or performing devotional service in separation of the devotees association, then if you start to realize that devotee association had an impact in my heart, it's had a positive change in my devotional service, in my attitude, then it's association. In the same way, you don't reveal your heart to non-devotees. Mahaprabhu was very strict about association with devotees, especially association with non-devotees, to the extent that he said that he'd prefer to be in a cage with a lion or surrounded by fire. Because he knew how valuable Krishna consciousness is. It's not a fanatic thing, he knew how valuable Krishna consciousness is. And my Guru Maharaj often mentions that sometimes we are like children holding a valuable jewel. For children, the only thing that's perceivable in the world is what fits in their mouth. So for us, we don't really value Krishna consciousness to the full extent or to our greatest capacity. So sometimes we take devotional service for granted. But Mahaprabhu is teaching us through an extreme example that he would prefer to exist within a cage of a lion or surrounded by fire rather than losing the opportunity of Krishna consciousness. Of course, we take it one step further and we try to become so Krishna conscious to the extent that we leave a positive impression on others. So we give the association, not take. Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, I was just, when you were speaking, I was thinking about Narakasura. He was in a position of material happiness, and Krishna takes away the material happiness and then gives it to his Sakama Bhakta, which is the demigod. So why would Krishna take away material happiness from a demon and then give it to the one who seems to be?
I think the whole concept of Sakam Bhakta is sometimes very bewildering, actually. Because if you think about it, devotional service means completely uncontaminated devotional service. Everything for Krishna's senses, nothing for me. But the demigods seem to have, established a certain thing where, yes, we'll do everything for Krishna, but we'll recognize Krishna as the giver of material enjoyment, so we'll ask him for that as well. So their level of devotion is much more greater than the karmis existing in other planetary systems. That's one thing. But the second thing is that it originally was given to the demigods by the Lord, so that they would perform their functions in material existence, and then hopefully by their devotional service they would then take the next birth either in Brahma Loka, or they would immediately go back home, back to Godhead, or they'd come back down, take birth in the Brahmana family, finish off their life and go back home, back to Godhead. But it's the same thing with pretty much throughout Srimad Bhagavatam. When they churned the ocean of milk, actually at that point in time, Krishna gave the demigods Amrita. For what reason? So that they could enjoy unrestrictedly heavenly enjoyment, right? But the demigods, they are still devotees of the Lord. But their devotion is to a degree that the Lord has, has trust in them to perform their duties. In that sense. So you can take it from that perspective. The second perspective you can understand is that the Lord, it's kind of like the Lord knows how much to give for them to perform their devotional service. That's just their mentality. Sometimes when we perform devotional service, someone tells you to do something, it becomes like kind of, whoa, what are you telling me to do? We don't have that pure devotional attitude that the instruction is coming from Krishna through this devotee, so let me accept. But sometimes when we get services that we like, we perform it with our full heart. So that you can understand the demigods from that perspective as well. That it just happens to be their position, but Krishna won't allow that for too long. Krishna won't satisfy that for too long. In fact, you'd consider their situation hellish, because Krishna hasn't given himself to them. Krishna will easily give liberation. They haven't achieved even liberation, so to speak. Their position is very shaky. So we shouldn't aspire for that position. That's the main thing. But because of their where they are in devotional service, in their progress towards Krishna's lotus feet, it just so happens that they're performing devotional service with that much opulence. So Krishna gives it back to them, knowing that they'll use it in his service, and at the same time they just so happen to be Sakama Bhaktas, that they want to enjoy the results. That's the main thing, I think. The main thing of Sakama Bhaktas, they understand Krishna is the proprietor. They'll offer everything to Krishna, but they'll still ask the Lord, please, we'd like to also have it ourselves. Whereas Narakasura's mentality was, it's just mine. Everyone can get lost, it's mine. So that's the kind of mood that Krishna just sort of demolishes, destroys. Yeah. Yes, Mataji.
One of the dust from the lotus feet of Krishna, and we say that all the lotus actually one dust. I don't think properly understand what does it mean exactly.
By the dust.
Is it like loving, like association with them? But my question is, yes, they are one as dust, but if they are one between as well, like if they mood, or just Krishna taken as a wife because it's there for purification. So I mean, we all one does, but what is the why it's not like all like